I'm here, back in Toronto, my home and native land, and today I'm going to introduce you to someone who has worked with me on many things over the years, here at Paper and Post. I'm here with Beckee Kavanagh, who is the owner of Paper and Post. And Beckee is not only the owner of this wonderful place, but a friend, and our friendship goes back to 2008?
Yeah,
around
I think so.
there?
Yeah.
So we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the history of how this all started. But Beckee runs a studio where, what would you say?
Mainly we focus on custom wedding stationery. Basically focusing on the art form of letterpress and the tradition of the original form of printing.
Now, today, so many invitations are sent out by email, where you get an envelope or a picture of an envelope and you click on it and it opens up.
Yeah.
I know the answer to this. But if you had to make a case of why someone should have something printed, what would you say?
Well, I would say it's the first impression your guests get of your wedding. You have one time in your life where you get to make this thing that's based on you and you as a couple, and personalize it and customize it to your event. And having that actual beautifully printed invitation says so much about your event, and it also shows that you value your guests in a way that you want to give them something to invite them to your big event.
Well, I'm a huge advocate of the handwritten word, of sending letters, of being able to hold communication in your hands that is on paper. So I believe in all of that stuff. That's actually where Beckee and I first met. We met working at a shop here in Toronto. I should have mentioned, we're in Toronto right now.
We are.
My hometown, Toronto. And in 2008, I was actually, admittedly, I don't know if you know this, in a real low in my life. I had graduated from university. I had been holding out for the lead role in Life of Pi. I found out that month in June that I didn't get it. They gave it to some unknown. And I was kind of at a crossroads. I was like, now what do I do? My mom urged me to go to the bank for an interview as a bank worker. I went and I left the bank thinking I would rather shoot myself.
Absolutely.
So, and I was just really at a low point. And I needed a job. So I walked along Queen Street and I went into one of my favorite stores, a paper store. And I thought I would rather just get minimum wage and find some tiny place to live and be content. And that's what happened. And that's where Beckee was working at the time. And she was just so knowledgeable about all the paper products we sold. I remember you had a hand in training me. And I was learning so much and having fun. I rode my bike to work every day and I was happy. When I left the paper place, I started a calligraphy business. And I started doing pen and ink work and chalk work, but there was this transition into digital where a client wanted my design to be done once by hand and then it needed to be printed. And I have an allergic reaction to technology.
Sure does.
Beckee and I have worked together on so many projects.
Training-wise, I'm a graphic designer, which has always helped when he sends me a picture or a scan of his hand-done thing for me to vectorize it and make it so it can be letterpress printed or it can be reproduced in bulk, right?
We have worked on so many things.
So many.
And such a variety. It started out with sort of traditional things like wedding invitations. Sometimes one of Beckee's clients would want calligraphy on their 100 envelopes and Beckee would hire me to do the calligraphy. Sometimes I would get the job to do, like recently there was wrapping paper for a high-end department store in Hong Kong, and they said, we need you to do it by hand, but you need to send us a digital file with the pattern repeated.
And he's like, how do I do that? And I said, okay, well, I can do that part, no problem.
And we go back and forth. And over the years of working with Beckee, what I've really learned is that in a relationship like this, you really need to trust the person. And I guess for couples, coming in for their big day,
Yeah.
there is some faith that they put in you
Absolutely.
before they get down to the printed matter.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Beckee has laid out some beautiful things here. Can you go through the main types
Of course.
of how
printing.
something
Yeah.
is printed?
Yeah, so I mean, basically we offer multiple different printing processes, and they can all, like, same design can be done in all of them. It's really the thing that drives the different cost in printing is the type of press process. We did get some of Rajiv's flourished fish cards printed, and I actually have the plate, which is really exciting because typically when you see a letterpress order, the client, or even me sometimes, doesn't get to actually get their hands on the plate. And the plate is kind of the really cool part that shows you how something comes from screen to then how it gets printed.
So I did this original
Yes.
in pen and ink. Like I sat at my desk and I used iron gall ink and did this fish, which is a copy. This is a copy of something from the 19th century that I've loved for ages. I've been doing this in ink and I've been doing it in chalk for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And we decided, because I really wanted to reproduce this. So Beckee and I had this conversation. How should we reproduce it? You can flat print something, which means you just put it through like a copy machine.
Yep, a regular digital printer, which is a lot of how we do a lot of the more colorful things.
Yep.
But letterpress and foil printing is a plate-based process where you do pay by color, and each plate is its own color. So this one, for example, he sent me the photograph of his drawing, and then I vectorized it so it could be done on a plate to then go on a press. So these are actually printed by my letterpress printing partner, Hubbub Paper Co.
Yeah.
They're in Cambridge in Ontario. And they actually print retail too. So anyone can get letterpress printed there. But essentially, what they do is they make, this is called a Palmer plastic plate. Basically from my file, they go ahead and they create the plate, and then it gets, yep, you've got the little back part here. And you'll see how it's backwards. It's because essentially the paper is going to press onto here, and it's going to take the mirrored image and push into the paper. And there's a few different things. The paper is cotton lettra paper, so it's made out of 100% cotton, which is made to absorb the press better than, say, like a tree fiber paper.
Yep.
So it goes deeper into the paper. And actually, the thicker the paper, the more it will absorb. So you see some of the wedding invitations, we up the thickness and it gets like a really deep, beautiful impression.
Like when the thing that you might not be able to see from here is that there's a texture.
Yeah.
Because it's not just ink sitting on the paper, it's ink that has actually been pressed, like pushed in to inset the design.
Because it's taking the negative of this and it's pushing it into the paper.
And this is thick. Like there's a thickness to this. And that is what makes this so, I think, so elegant. And this is old, right?
Traditional form of printing, like old newspapers, and basically the original form of printing before there was giant machines was done on a press. And it was done by letterpress, and that's how printing was done and where it originated, right?
For hundreds of years.
Yeah, so it's so cool that like we've maintained that, come back around, and it's never gone out of style. But I feel like for invitations, it creates like this luxe feel, tactile experience. Like it's just looks so much nicer.
When I had to decide how I wanted my cards printed, the incentive was really to share this flourished fish card with people who want a piece of my work, but that's affordable. Because if I was to do this by hand, this will be one very expensive card.
Yes, exactly.
And which has been done before.
Yeah.
But in order to take a $300 card and make it $4, I wanted to also choose something that was old, like that felt like it could be from the 19th century. And this is where Beckee comes in. She said, we have to do letterpress. And I love that it's all cotton, because that's also traditional.
Yeah,
it was
totally.
rag paper in the 19th century.
Yeah.
And this feels like, when I hold this, it feels old.
Yes, yes. And it also, it's not from trees. So the fact that it's cotton-based paper is really nice too. So all over, it's just, and the way that it doesn't use as much electricity for printing, like it's just overall like a more old world form of printing. Foil is basically still letterpressed, but instead of the plastic polymer plate, we've got these copper plates. So essentially it's made out of metal rather than plastic, which you can feel how heavy that is, right? And it's just because it needs to have an extra step on the press to push in and to add the foil, that it requires the metal plate.
And you can see that, that's like the lettering here is not ink, it's an actual foil.
Yep, so it's got that reflective texture, but then it's also still pushed in, which is really cool.
That's beautiful. Yeah, you could feel that. And look at the deckled edge on this.
Yeah, those are actually hand torn. So when we do those, we hand tear every invite so that it's got that nice deckled edge.
Wow.
Yeah, so basically these letterpress printers are very hard to come by. You can't just go buy one. You can't find them anywhere. The only way you get one is if somebody's closing down their business and you get their old press. And for that reason, they're really hard to service. They're hard to get parts for. It's like truly like an art form. Yeah. I believe this press that these were done on started to be implemented in the 20s and was only made until the 80s. So yeah, it's definitely, it's so cool that basically you can't get it elsewhere anymore, right?
Yeah, I love that. And that there are these machines that are producing new things, but in a very old-fashioned way.
Absolutely. So there's one more press process you can do on the same press, and it's called embossing. So this one actually has one color letterpress along with embossing on it. So what that does is it actually pushes up from the back of the paper, and it takes the color of the paper and raises that up.
Wait, I don't understand.
Yes.
So what are these the two pieces that are used?
Yeah. So you've got your negative piece and then your positive. So that goes on the front, and then the negative gets pushed through the back,
like this,
and they fit into each other.
Like sandwiched.
Yep. They get sandwiched.
To make this raised. I've always wondered how they did this.
Yeah, because it can't just be, you can't just push it from the back. It needs to have the sculpting effect of it. So it requires that positive and negative plate.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you see it on the back.
A little bit, yeah, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But basically it always doesn't have any ink color to it. It picks up, it pushes through the color of the paper. So if you had done a red paper, then the names would be red. But it's a really interesting way to do like a more modern look. You could also do a more traditional style, but with this kind of like more modern printing method. Yeah, it's really cool.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Now Beckee and I are going to take a little walk down memory lane, because we've worked on so many different projects together, and I actually have a little archive in New York of our projects.
Oh my gosh, okay.
That I pulled from, and I brought some things here.
Cool.
I think we should start with something very old.
Okay.
So, do you remember this?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So
10 years,
in
wow.
2014, we celebrated the 10th anniversary of Mean Girls, and I had a party in New York, and Beckee printed this, but she also, so I did most of it by hand. I did it with pen and ink, and there were lines that I asked Beckee to insert with like computer digital type, and then she had this letterpressed, so it's on really thick, it's on a thick piece of cotton card in pink ink.
You love it, yeah.
And I addressed all the envelopes, and this was sent out to a little group of people. That was the first thing. I love that so much. I think that's it turned out so well.
Yeah, and we just celebrated 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a blast from the past.
And then let's continue with the invitation theme. When I wrote my book, we had a publishing party, and Beckee designed and printed the card based on the cover of my book. So you printed these glass. I forgot about this, but
me too.
This was glassine paper that emulated the dust cover of my book. And then when this was opened up, I mean, look at what a difference this is to get this in the mail as opposed to a digital invitation.
Absolutely.
And this was also printed in letterpress.
Yep. On double thick stock. Supply. Only the best for you.
Like, just so beautiful. I mean, and Beckee took some flourishes that I had done on a previous project, and she
integrated them.
Integrated them into the design.
Yes, I have quite the archive of Rajiv calligraphy embellishments.
It just makes me so happy to see after all these years. So this is actually an example of the typical type of commission that I receive as a calligrapher from a client, where the client wants me to do one invite by hand and then have it printed. And I've done many of those. So I do the pen and ink, and then I send it off to Beckee, and Beckee designs it. She sort of tweaks it and then creates a digital file. This one was one that turned out so beautifully.
Okay,
do you remember
which one is it?
Anna and Mark?
Oh my gosh, okay, so this one's so cool because we almost printed the inverse.
Yes.
Right, with the navy being the part that's printed versus, you know, being on navy paper.
Yes.
So cool.
And there was some Scottish background in their family, so I chose to design the whole thing in the Scottish thistle.
Like, this is so unique. You don't see stuff like this. You can tell this was handmade, and then combined with the letterpress printing, it's just so beautiful.
And then the tiny little details.
Yeah.
Like the liner on the envelope was a tartan.
Yeah.
Beautiful. This is one of the commissions that I was the most proud of.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Because I have so much fun doing it by hand, but then when it comes back from the press, it's thrilling to me to see how that was transformed. Okay.
Yeah, didn't you do calligraphy on this?
Yes. Yeah. And they were sending them out from London, so we found some special Charles Dickens stamps.
Cool.
Always a very important detail. And their monogram.
Yeah.
I designed their monogram, and that was printed onto the envelope.
Yeah,
So,
those sorts of monograms are not easy to do digitally as a graphic designer.
Really?
Like, that has to be created and intertwined by hand.
yeah. So I that's another one of the commissions I receive regularly.
Yeah.
A 2-letter or a 3-letter monogram. Sometimes it's just a monogram, and sometimes it's a monogram that's part of a wedding suite, like this one. So this thing, I love this so much.
So cool.
You know, the little details of all these things. Beckee is constantly informing me and educating me of things I didn't know about. Like, for example, this flourished fish card, when it comes to us from the printer, it arrives like this, and we actually have to fold them. I wouldn't have given any thought to this score line, but...
Yeah, so you make sure you put the score on the side that you want to fold away from, so that when it's folded, it folds up into it, and it reduces the cracking that you would get. Especially with a cotton paper, it's going to be, any textured paper might create more of a crack. So pre-scoring it is going to create this divot that you then fold away from, and then you get that clean edge.
Because I would have assumed that the score line should go on the inside.
Yeah.
When I've done it manually myself, where I've scored the card with my bone folder, one of my most used tools in that.
Totally. Yeah.
I turn it on the inside and put the line in there.
Yeah, but that's a little tip. You're supposed to do it on the side you want to fold away from.
Wow.
Yeah.
I learned so much. Always. So that's the invite. And then here's another example of a beautiful invite, a little simpler, because there wasn't a liner in the envelope, but still on cotton paper, not as thick. And this was for a wedding that was taking place in Mystic, Connecticut. I chose to do an anchor and to arrange all the lettering around the anchor.
But like, this takes so much skill as a calligrapher, I would say. Like, getting that shape and fitting those words into that shape and not going beyond it. Like, I just don't know how you do it. On computer, it's easy. I just do it and delete it if I don't like it. But by hand, it's crazy.
Well, what has really helped me, inadvertently, like without even intending to educate myself, doing so many jobs in chalk, where I can put the line down and I don't have to be married to it, and I just erase it and do it again. It has given me the freedom to go wild with these things in pencil. So I sit at my desk, and part of the commission that I'm charging is the draft.
Yeah, the sketches.
Yeah, so I sketch and I erase, and I use tracing paper, and I work out all those tiny things in this one. One of the details that came in at the very end was on this line, wedding seemed a little empty. And I had been putting flourishes all over the place, and I thought, I don't want to put another flourish in. So I decided to put a fish in, because it's nautical. So there's
the
the head of the fish and the
yeah.
little tail. And that came in just like at the very end. And
so cool.
this is kind of the liberating thing about working in pencil or chalk. And then the last thing, well, not the last thing, but another thing I have here, which is not an invite. Do you remember these whiskey labels?
Oh my gosh!
Remember these whiskey labels?
Oh my gosh!
So I got a commission
So
from
cool.
Newtown, Indiana.
Yeah, and like look at the foil printing.
Foil printing.
On like the linen label stock.
Did you have these printed?
No, you printed them somehow.
I can't, or they printed them.
Yeah, they printed them. I know I did you did the drawings, I compiled the files. I basically did this, but like how cool.
So we did, I designed a label for bourbon and bourbon whiskey, and this was single barrel and sweet corn. I brought all of this stuff to show you the sorts of things that Beckee and I have worked on over the years and how the relationship has really been so creative. And it continues. Like recently, another good friend of mine, Deborah, who runs Upper Canada Weaving, decided to rebrand and she commissioned a new logo from me. So I designed the logo and then my job was done, and Deborah, from my recommendation, came to Beckee and had tags printed. Everything is hand woven, everything is made with such care. And look at these. So this is my logo that I designed, but Beckee had them letterpressed onto heavy cardstock, and when Deborah weaves a coverlet that was dyed with natural dyes, like after hundreds of hours of work,
it deserves a letterpress tag.
It totally does. You know, and that's
so cool.
Something that you could even hang that on a Christmas tree.
Yeah, and I love that like she was into the idea of making it this diamond shape versus square or rectangle.
Honey, that was my idea.
Was it your idea?
Yeah.
Okay,
I gave up with that.
It's so cool, right? It fits so well with your logo, and it's just that much different.
She lives in a house that's from like 1910, and I looked at the house because she weaves in the house, and there were all these diamonds in the brickwork. Oh, okay. So I pulled from that.
So cool. See, how creative is that? That's great.
The inspiration. Now,
I had a surprise for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I was doing some hunting as well. And so we met in 2008. I got married in 2013. And Rajiv did my wedding invitation addressing. So I found a sample. So this is Rajiv's calligraphy from, it would have been sent in 2012 maybe. This is purple calligraphy on orange. I had a specific color scheme then.
Can we see what's on the inside?
Yes, of course.
Because you had beautiful, look at this.
It was a destination wedding, so we did this fun passport invitation.
And you had this all printed and bound.
This is all letterpress and it's sewn stitching. But I remember saying to you, I don't care what the calligraphy looks like, do what you want. And some of them had ink splatters. We did purple and orange. It's just like so fun and unique.
This is an example of something that you might never imagine could be commissioned from a stationer, something like custom made for you. And this is why whenever I have an idea, even if I think I'm going to do it in a certain way, I run it by Beckee, because Beckee has such a vast knowledge of all of the different options that she often presents things to me that I never would have thought of. So I do this for my own projects, and I do this for clients that bring me things. So that is a great segue into two things that I brought you today. So I have some questions.
Okay, what's your question?
So the recent thing has been expanding my soap to start sharing it with people, because everybody's asking me if I sell my soap, and for all these years I've just ignored the question because I don't. I give it as gifts and I make it for myself. But I realized people really want it, so I'm going to make more and figure out how to make more and then and start selling it. So I have a bar of soap here with my label on it. So this label I did by hand in pen and ink, and then I actually took it to 11th Street and had Casey's Rubber Stamp make a rubber stamp.
Yes.
So yes, it was printed, but it was printed very...
But that's why each of them have a little variation, right? Because they're inked.
Yes.
Cool.
Now, the way I wrap the soap up is I print the stamp onto glassine paper. This is glassine paper, and I just found out that if I'm going to be selling this soap, I need to list the ingredients on it. So this is a recent revelation to me. So Beckee, she designed the ingredients label, and these are clear.
Just a little tiny cute label to put on the back.
Can you put one on the back,
Sure.
please? And can you do the honors of doing the first one?
Sure, of course.
Because I would love to, I don't know how these work. Like, how do we take the sticky part
So
off?
basically what I did was I found one of my, again, from the archives, a Rajiv flourish.
Like I did that flourish by hand from something
on who
else.
knows what project a while ago. So it's just got a little backing on it. You need nails, which I don't have much of, but there you go. And then you got it the right way. So I would just center it here on the back. Look how tiny and cute that is.
That is so nice. Look at that. So now this bar of soap is ready to be sold.
Perfect.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Beckee.
Of course.
So genuinely, this is the sort of thing that we have been working on. Now, my next question for you is, I would like these labels to be printed somehow. Like if I'm making 200 bars of soap, I don't want to have to be cutting out pieces of glassine paper manually and printing with Casey's rubber stamp.
Right.
So is there a way of printing this?
Yeah, so this is
what do you suggest?
So that's very similar to a vellum paper, which is very much like, here's one on a wedding invitation. So this one's maybe a little thicker, but we could totally print on something like this, and you could wrap it in the same way, and you could have your label on the front, and it actually could integrate this part on the back too.
Print it onto it. So it's not a sticker.
Yeah, as long as you fold it strategically, then you could totally do that. It would be a piece that's printed to size.
Would the paper be grease proof? Like the thing about glassine paper is that if there are oils in the soap, it's going to hold all of that in.
I mean, maybe we could try printing on that.
Okay.
On a glassine paper.
Okay.
Yeah, but vellum is more traditionally used, probably not oil proof. I'd have to test it. I don't know.
Okay, so maybe what I'll do is I'll send you a bar of soap. And I'll send you some glassine paper. And if you could do some experiments. Is there a way of gumming the sides?
Ooh, gumming the sides.
Or like, is there a way of, so that we're not manually applying double-sided tape or rubber cement on 300 bars of soap?
I mean, it's supposed to be handmade soap, right? So why not handmade packaging?
I only got 2 hands.
You could use there's like little vellum glue dots. You could use something like that to close it. But in terms of the paper itself, you wouldn't want it to be a label stop because you don't want it to stick to the soap, right? You want to stick to the label to wrap it. So I don't know. I'd have to think on that. But I think also these are really cool, the fact that you hand stamp them.
I might continue to hand stamp them. This is the sort of thing that we genuinely have been doing over the years. That's the first thing.
But we can sort it out.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Soap. The next thing, labels for candles. So these are the candles. I made these yesterday with my sculpture teacher, Mrs. Burke, with Ontario Beach. Smell these. They're fresh out of the...
Oh, wow. That smells so good.
They're like, when they're fresh, you can really smell the beeswax.
Do they smell, when you light them when they're fresh, are they stronger scented or?
You know, the smell comes when you extinguish the flame in the pool of wax, where you don't blow it out, but you, like with the end of a match, you just put it back in the wax, and then the whole room fills up with beeswax.
So cool.
So those.
Yeah, you usually use these, right?
I usually use these, and since 9th grade, I have been taking my label to a copy place and just having them copied, and then I cut them by hand.
I was going to say, these look like they've been copied over and over again.
They sure have, honey.
Okay, all right. So is it time to rebrand?
This is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
Okay.
So I brought this to you. Can you salvage this and make it clean again?
I can try.
And that's the first question.
Yep.
And then, is there a way to make a label where I'm not cutting it 4 times? Because this is on a taper, so in order for it to actually fit, so that the seam, like one side has to be cut like this, and then the other side gets cut like this.
So more angled?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we can cut it on an angle.
I mean, can I leave this with you?
Sure.
And can I leave this with you, please?
Yeah.
And then you can use these. You can have these.
Okay, amazing.
You could use those.
Yeah, but we can come up with a better solution for sure.
I actually end up cutting this thing like 6 times.
Right.
Like with scissors.
Yeah, that's weird.
For each pair of candles, and I'm like, there's got to be, and then I'm like, no, it's too short. Oh, now it's too long.
Yeah.
For 100 pairs of candles.
Yeah, no. We can come up with a better solution for that.
Okay. I mean, this is genuinely the sort of thing that makes it fun to work with someone who you trust. And I will close this conversation by saying that part of the unexpected thing about collaborating with you all these years is how you've done every single job with such grace.
Oh,
like, I really think of that word, and I think that you epitomize that. Really.
Thank you, Rajiv. I really appreciate that. And likewise.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well, we have some work to do. This is the introduction to paper and post. Now, do you work internationally as well?
Of course. A lot of our clients are US based, international based. Sometimes I never meet them.
Yep.
A lot of time everything is done over email. We have a lot of people that originally are from here, so they get married here. Like maybe you will one day. Or
no.
No.
No marriage, no children. What do I want to ruin my life?
Should we start again?
No. Okay. No, they could hear that. It's true. People are like, you know, it'd be so nice if you met someone. I don't want to.
There you go.
I want to make candles, and I want to make soap, and I want to go to bed at 2 a.m. Or
do what you want to do.
Exactly. And I love my life. So,
but yes,
no wedding.
People that maybe were here, they're originally from here, and then they come back to get married here. So we have clients everywhere. So yes, possible to work with Americans, Canadians, anywhere.
That's great to know. So that means wherever you are, if you decide that you would like a printed invitation or anything else printed, reach out to Paper and Post.
Thank you.
And I guarantee you will have a wonderful experience because of this wonderful person.
Oh, thank you, Rajiv.
Thanks,
I really
Beckee.
appreciate that. Oh, you're the best.